Doyle. Volume 2, Part 1, 1806 to 1811, Chapter 1. At the beginning of the year 1806, Nikolai Rostov went home on furlough. Denisov was also going to his home in Voronezh, and Rostov persuaded him to accompany him to Moscow and made him a visit. At the next to last post station, Denisov fell in with a comrade and drank 3 bottles of wine with him, and on the way to Moscow, in spite of the cradle holes on the road, did not once wake up, but lay stretched out in the bottom of the post sledge next to Rostov, who, in proportion as they approached the city, grew more and more impatient. Faster! Faster! Oh, these intolerable streets, shops, kalachki, lanterns, cab drivers, thought Rostov, when, having left their names at the city gates as visitors on furlough, they had fairly entered the city. Denisov, we are here. Sleep, he exclaimed, leaning forward with his whole body, as though by this motion he could hope to increase the speed of the sledge. Denisov made no answer. There's the cross street, where Zakhar, the izvoshchik, used to stand, and there's Zakhar himself, and the same horse, and here's the shop where we used to buy gingerbread. Hurry, there. Which house? Asked the driver. That one yonder, on the corner. That big one, can't you see it? That's our house, said Rostov. There, that's our house. Denisov! Denisov! We shall be there in a moment. Denisov lifted his head, coughed, and made no answer. Dmitri, said Rostov, calling to his valet on the coachman's seat, there is a light in our house, isn't there? Certainly there is. There's a light in your Papenka's room. They can't have gone to bed yet, eh? What do you think? See here, don't you forget it. I want my new Hungarian coat taken out, he added, stroking his young mustache. Now then, a little further, he cried to the postilion. Here, wake up, Vasha, turning to Denisov, who had again let his head fall back. Come now, get along. 3 silver rubles for vodka. Get on, shouted Rostov when the sledge was within 3 doors of his own entrance. It seemed to him that the horses did not move. At last the sledge drew up at the entrance at the right. Over his head Rostov saw the well-known cornice with the peeling stucco, the front doorsteps, the curbstone. He leaped out before the sledge had stopped and rushed into the entry. The house also stood as cold and motionless as though it had no concern with the one who was entering its portals. There was no one in the entry. My God, has anything happened? Thought Rostov, with a sinking at the heart, standing still for a minute, and then starting to run along the entry and up the well-known crooked stairs. There was still the same old door-handle, the untidiness of which always annoyed the Countess, as loose and as much askew as ever. In the anteroom burned a single tallow candle. The old Michaela was asleep on the chest. Prokofy, the hall boy, who was so strong that he could lift a coach by the back, was sitting making shoes out of selvage. As the door opened, he looked up, and his sleepy, indifferent expression of countenance suddenly changed to one of awe and even fright. Heavens and earth! The young Count! He cried, as soon as he recognized his young master. How does it happen, my dear boy? And Prokofy, trembling with emotion, rushed through the door into the drawing-room, evidently with the intention of announcing the good news, but then, on second thought, he came back and fell on his young baron's neck. All well? Asked Rostov, drawing away his arm. Yes, glory to God, glory to God. Only just done dinner. Let us have a look at you, your illustriousness. Are they all perfectly happy? Yes, salva Bohu, salva Bohu. Rostov had entirely forgotten about Denisov, not wishing anyone to announce his arrival. He pulled off his fur shuba and ran on his tiptoes into the great, dark drawing-room. Everything was the same card tables, the chandelier still in its covering. But some of the family must have seen the young baron, and hardly had he entered the drawing-room before there came with a rush like a tornado a small person who threw a pair of arms round his neck and overwhelmed him with kisses. Then a second, and still a third came leaping out of a second and third side door. More embraces, more kisses, more shouts, tears of joy. He could not tell which was Papa, or which was Natasha, or which was Petya. All were shouting, talking, and kissing him at one and the same time. Suddenly he discovered that his mother was not among them. "And here I knew nothing about it, Nikolushka, my darling." "Here he is, ours again, my darling Kolya. How you have changed! There are no lights. Bring tea. Now kiss me. Dushenka, dear heart, and me too." Sonia, Natasha, Petya, Anna Mikhailovna, Vera, the old count were all embracing him, and the servants and the maids, crowding into the room, were exclaiming and oohing and eyeing. Petya, clinging to his legs, kept crying, "Me too." Natasha, after having thrown her arms around him and kissed him repeatedly all over his face, ran behind him and seizing him by the tail of his coat was jumping up and down like a goat in the same spot and giving utterance to sharp little squeals. On all sides of him were eyes gleaming with tears of joy and love. On all sides were lips ready to be kissed. Sonia, red as kumach, also held him by the hand, and all radiant with affection, gazed into his eyes which she had been so longing to see. Sonia was now just past 16 and was very pretty, especially at this moment of joyous, triumphant excitement. She looked at him without dropping her eyes, smiling and almost holding her breath. He looked at her gratefully, but still he was all the time waiting and looking for someone else. The old countess had not yet made her appearance. And now steps were heard in the entry, steps so quick that they could be no one else but his mother's. But it was his mother in a dress which he had never seen before, one that had been finished since he was gone. All made way for him, and he ran to her. When they met, she fell on his heart, sobbing. She could not lift her face, and only pressed it against the cold silver braid of his Hungarian coat. Denisov, coming into the room unobserved by anyone, stood there also, and as he looked at them, he wiped his eyes. "Vasily Denisov, the friend of your son," said he, introducing himself to the count, who looked at him with a questioning expression. I know," said the count, embracing Denisov and kissing him. Nikolushka wrote, "Natasha, Vera, here is Denisov." The same happy, enthusiastic faces were turned upon Denisov's hirsute figure and crowded around him. "My dear Denisov," screamed Natasha, and forgetting herself in her excitement and running to him, she threw her arms around him and kissed him. All were abashed at Natasha's action. Denisov also reddened, but smiled, and taking Natasha's hand, kissed it. Denisov was conducted to the room that had been prepared for him, but the Rostovs all collected in the divan room around Nikolushka. The old countess, not letting go his hand, which she kept kissing every minute, sat next to him. The others standing around them watched his every motion, word, glance, and could not take from him their enthusiastically loving eyes. The brother and sisters quarreled and disputed with each other for places next to him, and vied with each other in bringing him his tea, his handkerchief, his pipe. Rostov was very happy in the love which they showed him, but the first moment of the meeting had been so beatific that his present happiness seemed a little tame, and he kept desiring and expecting something more, and yet more. The next morning the travelers slept straight on till 10 o'clock. In the adjoining room there was a confusion of sabres, valises, sabretaches, opened trunks, muddy boots. 2 pairs of boots cleaned and with brightened spurs had just been brought up and set along the wall. Servants were carrying wash-hand basins, hot water for shaving, and well-brushed clothes. There was an odor of tobacco and of men. Denisov, to Rostov's amazement, made his appearance in the drawing-room in a new uniform, pomaded and scented, with as much ceremony as though he were going out to battle, and showed himself so polite to the ladies and gentlemen present that Rostov could hardly believe his eyes. End of chapter 1.